Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, April 24th, 2026, and today we're talking about where the pros go to learn about farming. We're talking about what to do when you find a deserted island, if that should ever happen to you, and it is Feedback Friday, so let's do it. All right, happy Friday, revelers. I hope everyone is doing well and feeling fine this week. I had a bit of a late night out at a play last night that one of our children was in, and so albeit a little more tired than usual, I feel surprisingly alive today, which is good. Children's theater is pretty fun, so cheers to that. The farm is doing well, but it's also doing dry. Rain is always kind of the story, though this year it's not the rain in the sense that there's too much, but rain in the sense that there is almost none. So far, so good health-wise, and there's moisture in the soil, and no doubt I'm thankful for the cooler nights, but it's been hot and dry so far this spring, and it's barely even spring. My precip app says we're down almost 38% in rain from normal, so we'll see how that bodes for the rest of the growing season. There is still time for it to catch up, just preferably it won't do it all in one weekend or anything like that. That would be my preference, and much appreciated. Thanks. Anyway, what are things looking like in your neck of the woods? Let us know, or better yet, send us a 20-second farm video clip to farmermike@notillgrowers.com talking about your farm. Had some good ones this week, including one from Farmer Mike himself, so thank you for those, and big shouts to Mike for all of his work, as always. All right, so it is Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked about crops you can grow for market, but not for eating necessarily. Passive irrigation with gravity and lower pH for blueberries. Several great additions to the crops that you don't eat subject in there. Patreon member Dina Class added, quote, "Apart from veggies and such for my family, I grow almost exclusively specialty crops, quote unquote, dye plants, medicinal plants, edible flowers. They're a gray area, technically edible, but more like dessert than eating your veggies. I guess I just want to challenge your statement about how you think resources should only go towards food. Take something like the fiber trade in synthetics. Lots of folks are aware of the problems surrounding microplastics from synthetic fibers these days, but many folks are still blissfully unaware of the environmental issues with synthetic dyes, end quote." And that's totally fair. I mean, I think a lot of resources should go towards food, but obviously, like, I wear clothing and it's dyed. And dyes indeed were definitely one that I missed in that particular conversation. Good stuff. At Forging Your Roots added, quote, "You can also use stinging nettle and dog bane for textile purposes. The latter was used for extremely strong rope making, as even a few strands processed from the plant are very tough to tear once woven together. However, it also has some toxic elements to it, so be careful to use it at the right time, and don't just haul it into your house if you decide to process it. A lot of ants like to chill out inside the dead hollow stem at just the right time for harvesting for textiles," end quote. Good to know, and I definitely don't need to be bringing any more ants into the house than already find their way in here. Interestingly, we have fewer ants in the house in dry years. Like right now, there's not very many. When it rains, it also pours ants here for some reason, likely, seeking dry refuge. Also, I talked about some burlap I'm playing with, and at Snowflake Farm and a couple others noted, quote, "Hey Jesse, I noticed the burlap you were putting down looks lighter than the 10 ounce that Ben Hartman recommended, and more like the stuff that I received when I ordered it," end quote. I'll talk about all this later, but when I went to order burlap, I don't know, November or something, the only one I could find in the width that I needed at the time was like 8 ounces. So it is a bit light for a mulch, but I figured I would trial it anyway because I had it. And what I'll do is I'll just lift it from time to time, just literally like kind of pull on it a little bit to keep the weeds down per Ben's recommendation until the squash takes it over. But yes, in general, a denser weave is going to make more sense for weed protection. We'll see though. I think in the low weed situations like a no-till garden, it should help with the moisture enough, which so far so good on that front. Really good comments on that thread in general. On Tuesday, we talked about whales, not the country, but the... Is that a whale sound? Anyway, whales and reciprocity, contamination in the municipal compost, and do you need a soil probe? On the whales, I liked this from at Alan A. Nixon. Quote, "Animal intelligence and behaviors are a big topic between my wife, a zoologist, and I, a sociologist. We believe there's only a difference in variety and degree, not kind of differences. Franz de Waal is a great accessible read on the topic," end quote. And that's great. Love a good book recommendation, and I went ahead and ordered one of those. But I'll bet in general, you all have some fun dinner conversations. Lots of comments on the whales and lots of comments on the compost, like this from at Nick Zivs from Ontario, who wrote, quote, "I'd happily use the compost compost from my municipal facility for produce gardening if in years I hadn't found copious amounts of plastic from bags to pieces, wire, broken glass, etc. in pretty significant amounts, end quote. At Mikel 2380 wrote, quote, compost facility a few towns over from me unintentionally contaminated hundreds of properties. The forever chemicals in their compost were so high it actually ruined the wells of the customers. Turned out a local paper company was dropping paper pulp. It's not worth the risk of getting compost from unknown sources, end quote. And yeah, there were a few cases like that over the last few years that really woke people up to the risks there with PFAS forever chemicals. So yeah, some farms are exceedingly contaminated, almost borderline unusable. Very unfortunate stuff indeed. On Wednesday, we celebrated Earth Day by talking about what astronauts say when they return home, soil work you can see from space, and what cities and suburbs can offer the environment. I asked for some Earth Day memories, and some of you all had some good ones, which is nice to see. At Gets Crafty wrote, quote, I was in late elementary / middle school in the early 2000s, and while I did go to a Montessori school, I have great memories of big Earth Day celebrations each year. The school hosted a market with local vendors where even us kids could have a booth, and I sold my homemade dog treats, a climbing wall, and a 5K to start the day. End quote. Love that. At Amy Peary said, quote, happy Earth Day. When my kids were younger, I would take them to a local Earth Day festival by the river every year. Always a fun time. After volunteering there this year, I agreed to co-lead the Master Gardener tent with a friend for the foreseeable future. And I'm really excited to see how we can offer education and encouragement on ecological and regenerative gardening in our community. So much of my excitement and motivation around these practices comes from the work that you all do here. So thank you for that. End quote. That's super cool to hear. Let's keep making this holiday into something people remember and care about. I love that. At Bridget Mulrow wrote, quote, chiming in on the topic of can cities contribute ecologically. Tuesday's video was pretty down on municipal compost, and I won't deny that contamination is an issue, but I see food scraps and biosolids as some of the biggest ways that cities could potentially give back. Rural areas are sending all their nutrients and energy in the form of food to cities and never getting anything back. We have to close the loop, end quote. And I definitely don't disagree. I think I talked about it in that show. It's that ideal versus idea thing where we have to figure out ways to use less than ideal, organic waste materials like those because they're just getting wasted. They're just going off to the dump. It just has to be done thoughtfully and would take a lot of investment and some talented nerds working out the details there, testing the compost and designating what it should and should not be used for based on the feedstocks and potential for contamination. Great additions, though. Like I said, let's find ways for the cities to give back because there's so much potential there. At Hope of Dawn added, quote, perhaps this is incurably optimistic, but I don't see space exploration and the effort to get to the moon and beyond as necessarily a net negative for caring for the Earth. The original space race gave us an amazing number of advances in science, materials, and technology. If nothing else, I would imagine figuring out how to grow plants in space / adapt our living requirements to inhospitable environments like the moon and Mars will give us insights on plant biology, soil health, and microbiomes, and much more that can be used to improve how we handle our footprint on our own little blue world. Like so many things, it all depends on how we handle space exploration, but I don't think it has to be done at the expense of forgetting to care about the Earth, no matter what certain billionaires might say, end quote. And I can appreciate this. Like I said, I'm fascinated by the science of space and space travel and all those things. Whether it's necessary is kind of a different question. And truth be told, the push for the return to the moon is just a largely and thinly veiled, way to claim the moon and set the rules before China does to own the mineral rights ostensibly for the mining companies who will make unimaginably vast fortunes on it. So we will get thrown some nerdy science crumbs in the process for sure. So is it worth it? I mean, with 100% total respect for this view, for me, we already know how to grow plants. I think we should just do more of that. Yeah, here on Earth. Lots of fun comments that day and every day, really. You all have been amazing this week. Then on Thursday, jasmine vines, vermicomposting, a clover, and a pumpkin patch. What 5 books I would save in a fire and soiled with rocks was the kind of topics of the day. On the rocks, Philip Lam wrote, quote, so it's a huge pain in the butt to do, but when I was in Vietnam, they'd make a rectangular frame with wire screen attached with maybe 1 inch by 1 inch holes. They'd take a scoop of soil, throw it on the top of the screen, and the rocks would roll down and the soil would fall through. I have since back in America seen large steel versions of this used on new construction sites where tractors can dump scoops onto the screen to screen out the rocks. Like I said, it's a real pain, but land ain't cheap, end quote. Yeah, and sometimes the land that you can afford is mostly rocks, but there are indeed rock removing implements that, here in the United States, at least, that I think we've talked about before, different various rock removers. This is limited to some extent by the size that those removers can remove, but that is also a thing for sure. On the 5 books topic, Philip Flom also noted a book on medicinal plants and indigenous herbs might be useful in apocalypse, and that is definitely a good call. A good foraging book and a good medicinal herb book would probably have to come along. I wouldn't regret that, in that situation. I bemoaned the stringing of our tomatoes that day, and at Full Bart asked, quote, "Why don't you bury the string under the tomato when you plant them? I tie a loop and put it at the bottom of the hole, then put the tomato ball on top of it. A couple weeks later, I could come back and hang the string up and attach the tomato," end quote. I've heard that before, and that's not actually a bad idea. I hadn't really thought about it. I would still have to get down and prune them, obviously, but at least, the string would be there, and I could just pick that up and tie it off. Now, I just need to remember that in a year. Also that day, at Douglas Pierce Return to Forever congratulated me on Brighton's demolition of Chelsea. And I have to say, I've been staring at the Premier League table all week. It's just like one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a while, especially after our, brush with the relegation zone a couple months back. Anyway, thank you all. Great stuff as always. You all are amazing. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, where growers go to learn besides their own comment section, you nerds, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by GrownBy. Grow smarter with GrownBy, the farmer-owned cooperative. GrownBy is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now GrownBy supports in-person sales too. Their new app, GrownBy Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. GrownBy is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. GrownBy helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, a quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Farmer Friend, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, I just signed up for a Patreon membership, and I'm really grateful to feel like I'm in a place where I can do that. It's no exaggeration to say I've learned at least half of what I know about farming from no-till growers, and I work in a farmer training program, so I always send trainees your way. Thanks for all you've done to help change farming. It's making a big difference." Thank you. That's very cool to hear. I know you've said it before, but could you give us a reminder? Where do you go when you need to learn something new? What are the best sources you know of for information that's had the tires kicked, so to speak? I know you dig through scientific research. How do you usually find it? Or other non-science resources you've found to be helpful? Thanks for all your advice over the years. End quote. All right, great questions here, and thank you for signing up and supporting our weird little work over here. That's really appreciated. It will never cease to amaze me that you all are willing to do that, and so I hope our work does indeed, go to helping you and everyone else for free. That's the goal. All right, so I am going to answer your questions and expand a little bit just to include where do the pro growers go for their info. So for me, I use a few different sources for general information that aren't just me, experimenting on my farm, though obviously that's part of it. The first is books. I like to read. I like farm books. I will thumb through a random farm book at least once a week just to see what I can glean, because as your experiences increase, right, the relevance of certain books, even books you've read before, changes. So revisiting the books often has a lot of value that it didn't have when you first read them. I also love history books. Books about the history of agriculture are my favorites, and I often gain a lot of good insight and ideas from those books, just on growing methods and lo-fi techniques. Growing for Market Magazine is a good resource too. They've been a sponsor in the past, so full disclosure there, but I still subscribe and appreciate the articles they send. If I have a specific technical and or, like science-oriented question, I will often, start reading the research on that particular question and just seeing what's out there. That I honestly, most of that I just find through Google Scholar, and we'll just make sure whatever it is in a peer-reviewed or respected journal. I don't usually just read like scientific papers for goofs, but if I'm curious about something, I will spend probably more time than I need to on them. And good journalism. I read several articles out of the New York Times every day, many of them science or ag-related. Good journalism is just so incredibly valuable, and having done some journalism myself, I know how difficult it is and how valuable. Civil Eats is great journalism that is often more relevant to farmers as well. I also love conferences and farm tours and just chatting with my local farmer friends. That's probably where I get the most helpful answers to the questions I have, because it's from people in my area who actually tried those tools or techniques or whatever it is I'm curious about. I will go to Instagram a little bit for ideas, but I don't really spend any time there or really on TikTok. That isn't to say there aren't some good ones on there or good creators, just that the info is often, I don't know, it's a little bit repetitive or not helpful, or even just it's a lot of advertising. So the bang for the buck, and by buck I mean time, is just, it's not always there for me. Also, I don't like addictive things. Like, I really, really dislike that. As soon as I feel, the need to impulsively do something like check Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever, I just get off of it. After a lifetime of questionable addictions on my own, the last thing I want is just one more, that just devours my time and kills my mood, like TikTok can. So I try and avoid that one. Forums are good. Shouts to No-Till Growers Forum, and a lot of good pro growers will use those to converse. The Market Garden Forum on Facebook used to be really good. Again, I avoid Facebook, haven't been there in a long time, so I have no idea if it's still good. But if that site still has some semblance of a bright side, it's probably that you can chat with other growers in the forums, similar to like a conference, who have actually, used the tools, or at least presumably used them, or grown the crop, etc. For me, I don't follow like any influencers really, and that isn't to say there aren't really good ones out there. I'm absolutely sure there are. I just feel like it's easier for me to keep new and different information coming and being objective if I'm not being overly influenced by other people's content. So I don't watch a lot of it. Sometimes that means I'm out of the loop on something, but so be it. I'm human and happy to be wrong sometimes. Podcasts are a great resource for farmers, obviously, because we have a lot of time on our hands. I mean, I listen to some farming podcasts, but admittedly, I mostly listen to history, sports, science, or news because I am literally farming while I have the podcast time. So I don't always want to double dip there. I should, however, also add that a lot of pro growers listen to business podcasts and stuff like that, probably as much as, if not more, than farming podcasts, just to get a better understanding of their business and get some more perspective. And then we all need an escape. So they likely also listen to a lot of other stuff. For me, soccer podcasts. That's the one I go to. I probably listen to a few too many of those. Last thing I'll say is that pro growers will often seek out consultations to improve their production, find an older, perhaps retiring grower and pay them to pick their brain. That can be an excellent source of information and knowledge preservation. So yeah, paying somebody for their lifetime of work, I think that's a good idea, and then sort of preserving it. Anyway, I hope something in there was helpful. Let us know where you all get your growing info. Otherwise, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll start a country. Be right back, Stan. We could call it that if you want to. I mean, it's no pressure for me, but I'm just saying. Just make sure the Brighton is in there. Here we go. Today's episode is brought to you by Good Agriculture. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping and tax filing, so there is no scrambling at tax time. They keep your books clean and up to date and show you where your farm's finances stand. If you're behind, they'll get you caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. All right, back to the show. All right, so I've been pondering this thought experiment for a while now, and so I decided to put it to you all, and I posted the following prompt over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. You can go read it. It's not behind a paywall or anything. You find a deserted country or island or whatever. It's huge. It's got water and arable land, forest, wildlife, but nothing else. No population besides you, no government, nothing. It's just land and possibility. You and your conveniently genetically diverse group of friends decide to establish a country there that you assume will be there for quite a while, so you get to make the rules. What does it look like? Specifically, like how is it governed, if at all? What goals do you have for yourself and your family? What goals do you have for the community at large? And so that was kind of the prompt, and we got a lot of good responses over there. But obviously, I want to also share my own thoughts on what that would look like. But first, shouts to Lanny, Carl, Thomas, Chris, James, Hedgerow Farm, Brian, and Karen for all contributing, and I'll just leave it up there to continue the conversation if you all would like. But I should say, part of the reason I was thinking about this that I didn't disclose intentionally is that I wanted to see what people would do if they had a blank slate to get to the idea of what we should do with the slate that we have, which is to say a highly depleted planet in a world of crumbling democracies and unfettered capitalism. Like, in a sense, I wanted to see what we actually view as the perfect world so we could have an idea of what we are all actually working towards. You don't hit what you don't aim at, right? So anyway, a couple observations from the dozen or so comments over there. Observation number one is that we need rules. To some, that was a democracy. To some others, it was kind of more of a free society. Some took a more private ownership approach. Others took a more communal approach, but rules were the first thing most people did. Observation number two is that almost everyone is concerned with resources and caring for them to some extent. This makes sense, obviously, given the audience of this show, but I wonder if it wouldn't be a common answer regardless of the audience. You do have to look at what you have and what you can actually use. Observation number three, equality. Not everyone approached it the same way, but most people mentioned some form of equality, equal shares of the land and resources, neutral spaces, etc. No one said it's a free-for-all, you get what you claim and you get to protect that, which makes sense. I don't think anybody actually wants to live in that sort of world. And then there were several nuanced answers over there that I think are worth reading through if you get the time. So for me, what would I do? Given the admitted sparseness of the prompt, I think I would start with establishing a council where each family is represented, but every community member would have a vote. A survey of the land and its resources would also, have to be done early. I think because no land is equally rich in resources, like no one would be able to get the same amount of water and arable land, etc., and forest and all the things, that it would have to be, or I guess I would push for it to be in the council, a non-ownership, more cooperatively run land. The reason being, dividing land between the haves and the have-nots would result in resentment down the line. Housing areas would be centralized with community-run farm and grazing operations and soccer land all around them. The idea being centralize the community, manage the resources together, and share it all equally because you have equal stakes in its success. It would also have to just be a resource-based economy in that we are going only to use what we have and what we can replenish to build the community. For me, this sounds perfect because it sounds sustainable, community-based, quality-based, resource-based. Now, does it sound doable today? Well, I mean, probably not really, but could a resource-based economy be possible eventually if we work towards it? Yeah. Could we support more cooperative, farming communities? I think so. Maybe even as a society, we could start to encourage them, fund them, help establish and maintain them. Sometimes the barrier to entry is literally knowing how to do it. That would be a good use of government today, helping people to get together and work these lands cooperatively. But anyway, I like this sort of prompt because it forces you to think about what you actually want out of a society, what you actually would want to build, and what it would take to get there, at least a little bit closer to it. So what say you all? Let us know, or just think about it as you enjoy your weekends, or go debate over there on the Patreon thread. That's fun too. Otherwise, I think that's it for this Republic of Feedback Friday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. That's a word. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. A big thank you to No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear so I can get a drink of tea. Cheers. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you did bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of April for at least another week, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Bill Price, Alex and Oliver, Dwight Yoder, Bill King, Doug, and Ian at Grindstone Farms. Shouts to all of you for keeping this thing going and growing. And as a reward, I give you a ridiculous story. So as you will remember, our heroine, Lydia's cruise ship has just been hijacked by pirates, and it's frankly ticked her off a little bit. I'm not going to lie. So she decides to fight back, and not really thinking about it, she just walks up behind one of the pirates who is standing lookout and just pushes him overboard. Just bye. And another pirate comes running up. He sees her. He sees his mate fall and stands next to her, like right next to her, and says, "What the heck just happened?" And he looks over the side, and he looks right through her as he says it, as if Lydia's not standing right in front of him. Quickly, she grabs this pirate and throws him over too. And then she laughs, and another pirate comes running up when he hears the commotion and looks around. Lydia freezes because this one has a very large gun and he's pointing it in her direction, but he just walks right through her. It's then that it occurs to Lydia. She isn't alive anymore. She suddenly remembers the car accident. It stops her cold for a few seconds, but then she remembers that they can't see her, but she can throw them. She still wants to continue to enjoy the trip. So she gets to work. Cruise control. Dun, and then it'd have like a fun ending, like dun, dun, dun. something like that. It'd be great. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye.